Hi everyone, and welcome once again to Boat-Chât. First of all, sorry it's been so long since the last video. I was on vacation in Japan for a week and a half, and promptly after getting back I sprained my ankle and then had one of the craziest weeks at work I've ever experienced. The trip was great, my foot is healing, and things are getting back to normal, so here we are again. So in the background is a replay of a game I had recently in the Boat-Chât, which includes some pretty hilarious spontaneous teamwork between myself and a Farragut, alternating smokes and helping shut down what might have been a kind of dangerous push from the south. So it was a pretty fun battle, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's first talk about the new patch. 0.6.6 went live on the NA server this morning, and there are a few significant features worth mentioning. Possibly the biggest feature is the addition of the new operations co-op game mode. Each operation is a PvE challenge that might revolve around convoy protection, base defense, base attack, and any number of other possibilities, whatever they end up making up. I can't tell you much about the actual gameplay, as I didn't get a chance to play these on the public test server while it was up. However, I'm planning to give them a test drive soon, so I should have some thoughts on them for next week's video. What I can tell you is that if nothing else, this should be a pretty quick way to pull in a small pile of camos and signal flags every week. There are various secondary tasks, kind of similar to the 2016 Halloween event, with additional rewards available for each additional secondary task you complete. So whether or not the gameplay is particularly appealing, the rewards at least look decent. And like I said, I'll give a more detailed rundown of the mode once I've had a chance to actually play it. Another change coming in 0.6.6 is a buff to the penetration of German cruiser HE. This interests me as I'm actually grinding the German cruiser line. Yes, the German cruisers that were introduced about a zillion years ago. What can I say? I'm not always in a hurry to bang out new lines as soon as they pop up. So the specific change is that German HE shells for tier 6 and up cruisers will now have a 1:4 penetration ratio rather than 1:6 like all other HE shells in the game. Now, what these ratios mean is that HE shells in the game can penetrate armor based on a percentage of their diameter. So normally that's 1:6. And for example, a 120 millimeter HE shell could penetrate any armor less than 20 millimeters thick, 20 being 1/6 of 120. Now, I should note here that exactly 1/6 of the shell diameter, rounded to the nearest whole number in millimeters, is the smallest thickness of armor that will still shatter the shell. So the armor needs to be 1 millimeter less than 1/6 the shell diameter in order for the shell to penetrate. And this is totally different than overmatch for AP shells, which is a 1:14.3 ratio, and will penetrate at the exact fraction of the shell diameter, and those fractions are always rounded down to the nearest whole number. I have no reason why in the hell they made every single part of that as confusing as possible, but that's how the game math was set up. Now, what does this gibberish actually mean? Now, like I said before, all the boring nonsense, for the upper half of the German cruiser line, the 1:6 HE penetration ratio is being buffed to a 1:4 ratio. In simple terms, it will function very much like the IFHE captain skill, but without the fire chance penalty. This 1:4 ratio was already a feature of the 127 and 150 millimeter German battleship HE shells, but now it will extend to much of the German cruiser line, which will be a nice touch. It really is like giving these ships IFHE for free, which is a good way to offset the notoriously low damage per shell of the German HE ammunition. The AP is still just as good as ever, but having better HE performance will actually make the ships a tiny bit more flexible, which is always nice. For me, flexibility might actually be the #1 attribute that causes me to like a ship at all. I like knowing that I can contribute in a variety of situations as opposed to so-called feast or famine ships that might be death monsters in the perfect scenario but feel powerless in other situations. It will be good to feel like there's still a way to crank out good damage even when targets are well angled against your AP shells, for example. Not that IFHE couldn't have done the same thing before, but that's a costly skill to take on ships whose AP gets used way more often because of its better alpha damage. I'm currently playing the York, which is the oddball in the German cruiser line, in that it actually has pretty decent HE. However, this buff is going to be a big deal for the higher tier ships, as the increase will allow HE to penetrate 50 millimeter plating. Go look at the German battleships in the armor viewer and tell me that having 50 millimeters pen from your 8-inch shells won't be a nice touch. Makes the Hindenburg I'm working toward that much more appealing. So another of the big changes to the patch is the long-anticipated modification to the citadel space of Iowa, Missouri, and Montana. Specifically, the top of the citadel has been lowered to close to the waterline, as opposed to its previous layout where there was a considerable portion above water. These ships do already have a very thick main armor belt that will obviously bounce shells striking at an angle, but they're notoriously vulnerable to citadel shots from the side. Now, this change will not make them immune to big damaging shots if they're at a bad angle, but it should at least reduce the number of citadel penetrations enough to make active maneuvering a little less suicidal. It should make them feel a little closer to North Carolina and Alabama, which have a similarly low citadel space. Now, those ships are hardly immune from being citadeled, but they rarely take those big 30-40k damage salvos that something like an Iowa pretty much always takes anytime it has to make a turn at a bad time. So I look forward to the change because sometimes, even if you're not intending to open up your side to enemy battleships, sometimes you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. For example, let's say a torp salvo is coming in from a flanking enemy DD. You can't eat 10 torps and die, so you're forced to turn. These are situations where a single salvo of 16-inch shells could easily peel off half your health. I think those hits will still not be pretty, but maybe not quite so bad. Now, you still don't want to get hit in the side, and you shouldn't play the ships any differently, but those sticky situations like what I described might hurt a little less than they used to. I love the Montana, loved it even prior to the change, so having a slightly less enormous citadel can only be a good thing. Now, the final change that I'm excited about is an option for ultra-quality sound. It involves a considerable investment in disk space and corresponding download time if you're on a slow connection. Is it worth it? Well, I've only had a brief chance to play with it on, but my thoughts are that it is subtle. I thought the game sounded pretty good before, and some of the new details are nice, but whether it's worth it to you depends on the size of your hard drive and the quality of your speakers and/or headphones. I noticed, for example, that the reverberation on gunshots seemed to last much longer and be more spacious. Ambient sounds were a little more interesting, and there were a few other details like alarms going off in the distance where they previously wouldn't have. For example, when you get a single fire. Here's a few seconds of me deliberately getting shot at a bunch in a co-op battle just to test the sounds. So you be the judge. I will use it because I love quality audio and don't have any disk space issues, but I don't think you're getting a poor experience with the standard audio settings, but I'll keep listening for other changes as I play more, and if my feelings about the ultra audio quality change, or if I notice any fun details or Easter eggs, I'll be sure to let you know. So that's about it for right now. Now, as I try to make this channel more fun for you all, I'll mention that if you have friends who like this game and would enjoy a weekly dose of news and miscellaneous boat-related stuff, please tell them about the channel. Now, that's not because I care how many subscribers I have. I truly don't. But I'd love to make this as much a Q&A as a newscast, and for that sort of thing, the more the merrier, both for a variety of questions and hopefully some discussion too. Now, that said, if you have questions about the game, for example, maybe a specific game mechanic that doesn't make sense to you that you'd like to have explained, like, I don't know, HE and AP penetration calculations, or if you're just generally curious about something, ask away. Now, that said, I have the first super official call for audience participation. I want to know one ship that everyone seems to love that you hate. I'll tell you mine. It's the Grosser Kurfürst. I consider myself to be pretty solid in battleships, including really brawly ones like the Kurfürst's baby brother, the Bismarck. Everyone swears that the Kurfürst is the most boss battleship in the whole game, but I do vastly better in Montana for some reason. There, now you know my shameful secret. So yeah, let me know if you have a ship that treats you very poorly, even though everyone else thinks it's amazing. Let me know either via the comments or the email address on the screen, and I'll actually do a mini "What's the deal with this ship?" section in the next boat chat. It'll be a ton of fun. So that's quite enough of me blabbing for one episode, so that'll do it. Thanks a bunch for watching, and happy boating.